Welcome back to Thinkiverse, the YouTube channel unlocking knowledge across the spectrum every day. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into fascinating topics from around the world. Today, we've got a really interesting one for you. The UK is making a big move that could impact millions of workers, a significant minimum wage increase. We're going to explore both the potential benefits and the possible challenges. Here to help us unpack all of this is the insightful Rona Esclito. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to dive into this with you.
So, for our listeners, let's set the stage. The UK government recently announced this minimum wage hike, and I'm curious, what are some of the key details that stand out to you?
Well, starting in April 2025, the UK's national living wage, or NLW as it's often called, is going to jump to £12.21 an hour. That's for those aged 21 and over, and it's a 6.7% increase from the current rate.
Got it, so a decent bump for those workers.
Yes, but the increases for younger workers are even more dramatic. Those aged 18 to 20 will see a 16.3% jump to £10 an hour. And 16 and 17-year-olds, as well as apprentices, are getting an 18% raise to £7.55.
Wow, those are big jumps, especially for younger workers.
Exactly. For a full-time worker earning the national living wage, that could mean an extra £1,400 per year.
Now, that's a number people can really grasp. So this wasn't just a random decision, right? What was the government's thinking behind such a significant increase?
Well, it's interesting because this is the first time the UK government specifically instructed the Low Pay Commission, or LPC, to consider the rising cost of living when making their recommendations.
And for our listeners who might not be familiar, who is the LPC exactly?
The LPC is an independent body with representatives from employers, trade unions, and experts. They advise the government on minimum wage rates. Now, the current government, which is Labour, has been really vocal about establishing a genuine living wage, and they see the minimum wage as a crucial tool to do that.
So it sounds like a real effort to improve people's lives. But as we mentioned earlier, there could be challenges for employers too. What are some of the concerns you're seeing?
Well, such a rapid increase in labor costs, especially after a 20% rise in the adult rate over the past 2 years, can put a strain on businesses. And the LPC themselves, while supporting this increase, acknowledge the challenges for employers. In fact, they're starting to see signs that some businesses are finding it difficult to adapt. They'll be releasing a full report on this soon.
It sounds like there's a real tension here. The government is trying to help workers, but are businesses going to be able to keep up?
Exactly. We're seeing a range of opinions. The Confederation of British Industry, or CBI, warns that this increase could strain company finances and limit investment spending.
Hold on, so they're worried that this move could actually backfire and hurt the economy?
That's one of their concerns. They fear businesses might cut back on investments and hiring to afford the higher wages, ultimately hurting the economy and even leading to job losses.
Wow, I see what you mean about tension. What about other groups?
The Resolution Foundation, a think tank focused on living standards, is worried about unintended consequences. They suggest employers might shift toward more self-employed workers or contractors to minimize costs.
Interesting. And what about the Bank of England? How are they reacting to all of this?
They're definitely watching closely. Wage growth is key when assessing inflation. Rapid increases could lead to higher prices for goods and services impacting the whole economy.
So we have a very complex situation developing. You have workers who need help making ends meet, businesses struggling with rising costs, and the Bank of England trying to keep the economy on track.
It's a delicate balancing act, to say the least. It really is. And it's important to remember the human impact of these decisions. For someone working full-time at the current NLW, that extra £1,400 a year could be life-changing.
It's easy to get lost in the big picture, but you're right. This is about real people.
Exactly. It could mean affording a family vacation, handling a car repair, or just having less stress about money.
Those are things everyone can relate to. And for those younger workers starting out, those bigger percentage increases could be a game changer.
Absolutely. It could help them cover education costs, save for a home, or just gain some financial independence.
It seems like a real shift in priorities for the government to explicitly factor in the cost of living.
It does signal a change. They're placing a much stronger emphasis on worker well-being and social equity. It's not just about economic growth, it's about making sure that growth benefits those who need it most.
That's encouraging. But are there any potential downsides we haven't considered yet?
One concern is that businesses might pass on these increased labor costs to consumers through higher prices.
So if everything gets more expensive, it could cancel out the benefits of higher wages.
Precisely. And we have to consider automation, too. As labor costs rise, some businesses might be more inclined to invest in technology that can replace workers.
That's a scary thought. Could this lead to job losses?
It's a possibility, particularly in sectors that relied heavily on low-wage labor.
It seems like the government is trying to walk a tightrope, but this could have so many unforeseen consequences.
It's definitely a complex situation with no easy answers.
Yeah, no easy answers here. And as you mentioned earlier, the LPC is releasing a report on how businesses are adapting to these wage increases. I'm really curious to see what they uncover.
I think that report will be really valuable. It'll give us real-world data on the specific challenges businesses are facing.
Data is one thing, but what are we really looking for here? What kind of adaptations are we talking about?
Well, are businesses cutting hours, reducing staff,
Right.
raising prices, or are they finding creative ways to improve efficiency and productivity? These are the questions we need answers to.
It's like a real-time experiment playing out in the UK economy. It'll be fascinating to see what strategies emerge.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that economics isn't just about theoretical models. It's about people making real decisions in a dynamic world.
Right. And speaking of decisions, this minimum wage increase is only one part of the picture. The government is also planning to expand workers' rights, which could further impact businesses.
It's all connected. We need to understand how these different policies interact and what the combined effect will be.
Yeah, it's definitely a situation to watch closely.
It certainly is.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful conversation. Thanks so much for helping us unpack this complex issue. I think our listeners now have a much deeper understanding of what's at stake here.
It was my pleasure. These are important conversations to be having.
Absolutely. Before we go, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. We've talked about the immediate impact on workers and employers, but what about the long-term effects? How might this minimum wage increase influence things like consumer spending, business investments, or even the overall direction of the UK economy? It's something to ponder.
Those are excellent questions, and I think they highlight just how interconnected all of these issues really are.
They really do. And that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the UK's minimum wage increase. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Thinkiverse for more deep dives into fascinating topics from around the world. We'll see you next time.